Peace, everybody, peace. I am Nazia Ademi, and today is Trauma Tip Tuesday. And the topic for today is going to be, does talking about your trauma really help? Now, despite common belief, talking about your trauma really does help. How else will we heal if you refuse to talk about it? What we have to understand is that yes, it's painful. Yes, it musters up and brings back emotions that we spend a lifetime trying to forget. However, how are you going to heal it if you refuse to feel it? How are you going to heal it if you refuse to talk about it? For example, that's equivalent to going to the doctors, right? And you want the doctor to heal you. You want him to fix you. You want him or her to give you a prescription to make you or help you feel better. But you refuse to tell the doctor your symptoms. You refuse to give the doctor any information on how you have been feeling and what's been going on and what happened. Anytime you go to a doctor's appointment, they ask you about your family history and they ask you about your history. And that helps them to be able to diagnose and prescribe. But if you go to the doctor's appointment and you refuse to tell the doctors your family history or your previous history, how can you expect for the doctor to give you a prescription to help you feel better? So when we equate that to healing emotionally, how can you expect to begin to feel better or learn how to do things differently if you refuse to talk about the family history and then your history and your background? So with that being said, let's start off by talking about how trauma is personal. It's very personal. What is traumatic for you may not be traumatic for someone else. And when you put it in that kind of perspective, it helps you to understand that each person in their mind decides what's traumatic for them. We decide what's traumatic for us. Our brain literally tells us this is too much. And that's when an event becomes traumatic. So if it can be personal, then your healing can be personal too. And your healing is not generic. You can't come to me and say, well, you told such and such that if she just, did affirmations in the morning, that would help her. I tried it and it didn't help me. Well, your trauma may be a little bit different. So your work is going to be different, right? So I hope that that's clear to everybody. Talking about your trauma, it's not going to disappear, right? Your trauma doesn't just go away. You cannot forget, you cannot unsee, you cannot unhear things that have happened to you. But with healing comes, you learn how to cope and you learn how to deal with those emotions when they come up. So what happens is talking about your trauma validates it. It validates it. When we ignore it, we think because we just don't talk about it, it's just going to go away. It's going to disappear. That is so contrary. It does not just go away because you don't talk about it. It's still there, festering, waiting for the right moment to just explode, right? And so when we talk about it, we validate it. We validate those emotions. We give ourselves a voice. We give that pain, that event, that trauma, we give it a voice. And in giving it a voice, we take our power back and we decrease the amount of emotion that it holds. Does that make sense? Talking about it does help. It's not the cure. It's not the prescription, but it is the beginning, because in order to talk about it, we have to learn, in order to heal, we have to learn how to talk about it. We have to get comfortable in the discomfort. And I know that's not easy. You don't want to, then you don't want to talk about it. You don't know who to trust. You don't know who just wants to know your business or who's really trying to help you. That's why you go to someone who is a professional. And please do not talk about your trauma for the purpose of healing with the family members that hurt you. That's like going to the person that shot you to say, can you stitch me up? Like they shot you. Why would they want to stitch you up? And so it's so multifaceted when it comes to trauma, when it comes to healing, when it comes to the first step is saying, I need to heal. That's number one. The second step is talking about it. Talk about it. What hurt you? What did it do to you? How does it affect you to this day? Like you have to be able to get to the core of the issue in order to heal the symptoms, right? Because our trauma responses, the things that we do in response to the things that happen to us are symptoms, right? This is a reaction, right? So in order to heal the symptom, you have to get to the core of it. So I just need that to be stressed. I need you guys to understand that in order to begin is the key word in this sentence. In order to begin the healing process, you have to get comfortable with talking about it. Find someone that you trust and talk about it. It has to be talked about. What hurt you? How did it make you feel? What thought patterns came about after that event? So that's the one thing that I want to stress. It does not heal you. Talking about it is not going to make you feel better. Everybody is just looking for a quick fix. Everybody is looking for that magic pill they can pop to make the pain go away. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not going to work that way. You have to do your work. And in doing your work, you have to begin talking about what happened. What happened? Where did the breakdown come in at? How did you go from this, loving, trusting, vulnerable person to someone who doesn't trust anyone? Let alone, doesn't trust yourself, let alone anyone else. Where did the breakdown come in at? So when we get to the point where we're comfortable in talking about it, right? And we'll start to see the layers peeling back. Those layers peeling back. And when you start seeing the root, like, oh, this is why I respond this way. Oh, this is why I look at this person this way. Or this is why I don't like the color red. For example, I have an aunt, and I hope she watches this because it just came to me just now. I have an aunt who grew up in foster care. And her foster parents would lock her in the basement and feed her stale bread. And to this day, she's well in her elder years. And to this day, she cannot smell bread. If it smells too yeasty, she's not going to eat it. It could be fresh, but if it smells yeasty, she won't eat it. That is a traumatic response from a traumatic event. And if she doesn't talk about it, if she didn't tell me that event that happened, if she didn't feel comfortable in telling me what happened when she was a child, then how would she have ever known that that's the reason why she can't eat yeasty bread? Or how would I have known that if I offer my aunt a lunch meat sandwich and it smells too yeasty, she's not going to eat it? So how would I be able to care for her in that way? How would I be able to not respond in a negative way, or not feel as though her neglect or decline of my sandwich isn't offensive? You don't want to eat my sandwich? Why not? If it smells too yeasty, I can know that my bread is fresh. I just bought it from the bakery a few days ago. Like, I know my bread is fresh. But for her, if she smells the yeast, it's too much, it triggers a memory, and she doesn't like it, so she won't eat it. That is a traumatic response. So I wanted to give that as an example to understand the importance of talking about it, because if that conversation was not had, I would have not known how to relate to her, how to communicate to her. Now, when she comes to my house, I know I'm not going to give her any bread that's not fresh, like baked that morning. You understand what I'm saying? So I want you guys to know, talking about your trauma begins the healing process. You cannot begin to heal what you refuse to talk about. And you cannot expect for anyone, whether it be a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a life coach, a childhood trauma coach, you cannot go to anyone for help and expect for them to give you a prescription to feel better if you refuse to talk about the family history and your own personal history. Does that make sense? Okay, so Trauma Tip Tuesday, talking about your trauma begins the healing process. It's not the cure, it's not the prescription, it's not the diagnosis, it's not the end all be all. And it does hurt and it is uncomfortable, but it begins the healing process. So get someone that you trust, get with someone that you trust, and talk about it. Let's talk about it, okay? Let's get to the core, all right? I love you all. And remember, healing is a journey, not a destination. Peace.